I think people understand that food is an important issue, but I think there can be a disconnect between, knowing that I've left food on my plate or I took things I've decided not to eat, and the fact that there is this larger issue at stake.
I think Americans in general probably do care about wasting food, but I'm not sure that they care enough to really act on that care.
She's making a documentary for a class. Did you want to talk about how you feel about food waste? If you have a strong opinion.
We have had for 60 years this attitude of we have something we don't want to deal with, it goes away. Incinerators or landfills are covered up, and we just don't give it a second thought. We don't want to have to deal with that. We're looking forward, not back.
We're doing a food waste campaign this week. So next meal, go for clean plate. Beautiful, thank you. Get a sticker.
This goes for waste management in general. Once something's out of people's sights, they forget about it. It's out of sight, out of mind is often people's relationship to waste. As long as it's out of their hair, they don't really care what happens to it.
Did you finish your food?
Maybe, probably not.
That can be a source of apathy, really.
Okay, I can't read that, but still. Not cool.
Why would you take a sandwich from the grill and just throw it out?
So what's the big deal about food waste? Well, how about we start from the beginning, in a landfill. In a landfill, as I'm sure you must know, it's filled with a bunch of trash. And that sandwich you probably didn't finish from lunch gets thrown into the very bottom of this trash. Now, what a lot of people forget is that everybody else has a bunch of trash, and eventually this trash builds up and topples all over your sandwich. This is bad because it blocks off oxygen, which food requires in order to break down naturally. So that sandwich of yours eventually begins to generate methane gas. Now, methane gas is dangerous for the planet because, okay, that's better. When it's released into the atmosphere, it reflects back, causing temperatures to rise and polar ice caps to melt and terrible things like that. So, that sandwich you didn't quite finish from lunch, it's not such a good thing. In fact, it's quite sad.
I finished all of my food. I didn't eat some of the broth, but the soup at that point had gotten cold, so it just was no longer enjoyable.
To take edible food and take too much because you're a glutton or a bad judge of what you can eat, taking away or it's disrespecting what can sustain another person. You disrespected the lives, the animals and plants that gave up their lives so that that food could get put on your plate.
To say it's a danger to the environment, it's it's hard to say there's sort of a smoking gun that this tomato killed somebody or caused a polar bear to drown or something. But it adds the cumulative effect of all that food waste having to be dealt with certainly has an environmental impact, and those environmental impacts have repercussions.
Why do you think it is that people can recognize it's wrong, but yet, at the end of the day, don't really feel that bad if they end up wasting food?
Well, I found myself asking that question many times.
How do you feel about food waste in general?
Food waste?
Yeah.
I don't like it.
All right, thanks.
I think if you ask people, I think you'll be very hard-pressed to find anyone that says it's okay to waste food.
I think that's just general, that happens with a lot of things. People just out of sight, out of mind, they just don't want to know.
I think people are careless. They don't care. They're not invested. It's going off their property and they'll just throw in whatever they want.
It wasn't that long ago that people were very tuned into food waste. For one thing, they didn't have much money during the Depression, during 2 World Wars, when the country was first being settled. People didn't waste anything. And if you go to developing nations now, or nations that have a fairly recent history of being a developing nation, you can see that by and large, food isn't wasted there. It's somehow in the financial and economic success that this country experienced after World War II, we sort of lost sight of the fact that there's a lot of value in food waste.
Holy macaroni, did you know that food waste can actually be recycled? When I went to Boston's only remaining farm, the manager told me about material called compost, which is essentially food waste broken down into a soil supplement.
So, what exactly is this compost made out of?
Well, vegetable matter, leaves, grass, hay, plants, waste from the store, pumpkins, pretty much any kind of biodegradable organic matter that we collect on the farm.
So, what's cool about this is it's actually made from potato.
Wow.
So it will break down, but it's so sturdy. Most people, if I tell them it's compostable, they're like, no. They just tell me I'm wrong.
And seeing that stuff, we're a small business located in Charlestown, and we've grown significantly in the past 10 years.
I work at the Harvard Office for Sustainability. I run the Resource Efficiency Program, which is sort of the undergraduate outreach program.
And we service most of the major hospitals, most of the major universities in the Boston area. We have about 3,000 customers, and we do it all.
So we have student employees in each of the houses and a few in the yard who reach out to their peers about environmental issues like food waste, but also energy use, recycling, those sorts of things, very pragmatic things.
Harvest Power is an organic waste management company. We specialize in composting, anaerobic digestion, and gasification. These are different technologies meant to process organic waste in a way that's more environmentally friendly than landfills or incinerators, which is the default now for the most part.
Yeah.
You really feel like, in some small way, you're making things better. And it takes a long, long time to make things better in big and lasting and meaningful ways. And so you have to be patient to see the changes that you want to see. But they do happen. And if you challenge people and you give people find out what they need to know about environmental issues, you can bring people around. So it is possible to make good progress on these issues.
Hold up. Now you actually thought I was going to finish this film without giving you tips on how to reduce food waste? Of course not. That's why I got 5 tips for you. Let's start with number 1. Sometimes our eyes are much bigger than our stomachs. Now, you can either try and surgically change this, but my best advice is just to remember that at most meals, you can probably take seconds, or even thirds, or even fourths. Tip number 2. If you're trying the food you've never eaten before, always just take small amounts. Trust me, when my mom serves that brand new vegetable casserole dish, this is always the best idea. Tip numero 3. Next time you're in the dining hall, try and go trayless. Research has shown that when you take a tray, you're much more likely to pile more things on your plate that you won't be able to eat. And if you're at home, just remember, leftovers are your number 1 friends. Tip number 4. Next time you're with people, tell them about what you learned about food waste in this film. Trust me, they'll really love it. Tip number 5. Buy a dog. No, really, dogs eat whatever you leave over. Okay, not really. But you can donate good food you have to homeless shelters or your local food bank. But really, the most important thing about food waste is that it really doesn't have to be wasted. All it requires is just a bit more consciousness.